Tonight on CFTK-TV News, nurses call for action in local retention, the BC ostrich farm loses its battle, and it's time to gear up for the ski and snowboard swap.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on this Friday, November 7th, 2025. I'm Jaylene Matthews. The Terrace RCMP have released a warning related to a recent incident. The police got word that a local business realized that a man had made a purchase with counterfeit money, and later that same day, another business caught a man trying to pay with fake bills, but they didn't accept it. RCMP ended up seizing the counterfeit money from one of the businesses and eventually arrested the suspected man for possessing counterfeit money. While the man was released with a future court date, the Terrace RCMP are still investigating this case and have warned businesses to watch out for anyone looking to pull off a similar scheme. The BC Nurses Union is renewing calls for action at this week's City Council meeting in Terrace. Nurse and Union Representative Marley Emery described a severe shortage, one that's critical and hitting smaller communities especially hard, speaking with the president of the BC Nurses Union, who points to nurse-to-patient ratios as the only way forwards. CFTK-TV's Helen Asante shares more.
I would say that implementing minimum nurse-to-patient ratios is the solution. The other thing is we know it's good for patients. When we have ratios, we have decreased readmission rates. We have a decreased length of stay. That actually saves money. There's a decrease in nurse vacancies, which means that there's a decrease in turnover, the need to orientate new staff. All of those create savings in the system. But I think the biggest payoff is that when we have safe staffing levels, which is what minimum nurse-to-patient ratios does, is it actually reduces the 30-day mortality rate for patients, which means that there is a reduction in preventable deaths.
The president urged nurses to hang in, saying progress is being made.
Number of surveys that we've done, 35 to 40% of our members at any given time are considering leaving the profession, and some admit to making an active plan. I would say that, I don't blame you. I want to say thank you for your service. And I want to say that I do believe we have solutions. Are they coming fast enough? No, they're not. But we do know that when we can if we can hang in there a little longer and recruit and retain more nurses, that the system is going to get better. And for nurses that are considering leaving the profession, maybe consider not leaving the profession, but maybe going into another area of nursing. If we can retain you to the profession, at least then we haven't lost you.
Northern Health previously told CFTK-TV News is focusing on incentives, recruitment, training, and redesigning care to help stabilize the staffing. But the union says the time for action is now.
In terms of government, I want to say wake up. Wake up. I want to say to the health authorities, wake up. It's not when we're in a crisis. We are in a crisis. I mean, look at the emergency room diversions and closures. British Columbians are not able to access the care that they require and they deserve. And I want to say that it is profoundly impactful in more rural and remote communities because there just isn't other options. And so I don't know what everyone's waiting for. We need to address the violence. We need to implement minimum nurse-to-patient ratios. We need to treat nurses with respect and value them for what they bring to the healthcare system. And I don't know what we're waiting for. The time to act is now.
CFTK-TV News, Helen Asante.
The Skeena Ski and Board Swap is happening this weekend with item drop-offs from 6 to 9 p.m. Friday and shopping and swapping happening from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturday. CFTK-TV's Kale Maslin has more.
Today and tomorrow, we'll see the Kitsum-Kalem Community Hall host this year's annual Skeena Winter Extreme Ski and Board Swap. The community fundraiser is being put on by both the Canadian Ski Patrol Skeena Zone and the Shames Mountain Ski and Snowboard Club. The event's organizer also went on to mention what typically happens at this event.
It is a consignment winter equipment sale. It starts at Friday, November the 7th, 6 p.m. where people can arrive and consign their winter items for sale. That ends at 9 p.m. on Friday, and then the sale event starts on Saturday at 10 a.m.
The organizer next provided more details about the event, like what they're raising money for and what else they hope to achieve by putting it on.
So this event is a primary community fundraising event for two long-serving community partner groups, and we've been hosting the Ski Swap for almost 50 years together. So it's an opportunity to welcome the winter season with our friends and community members. It's an opportunity for people entering the sport to get low-priced, high-quality equipment. It's an opportunity for people that want to upgrade their equipment to sell their used items.
Various other local businesses and community groups have attached themselves to this event as well.
That will be entities such as My Mountain Co-op, Onion Lake Ski Trails, Terrace Off-Road Cycling Association, Terrace Search and Rescue, Northern Escape Heliskiing will be able to have an information booth to promote their own organizations.
All of the funds raised by this event will go towards both supporting volunteer first aid and rescue services, as well as the professional development of young ski and snowboard athletes. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Kale Maslin.
A swap is also happening this Friday and Saturday in Smithers at the Smithers Christian Reformed Church on Walnut Drive, with gear drop-off tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. and the swap happening on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Coming up next, the end of the road for the Edgewood Ostrich Farm. West Fraser Timber Company Limited is shutting its mill in 100 Mile House by the end of the year, citing supply challenges and soft lumber markets. The company says about 165 employees will lose their jobs, and West Fraser's overall capacity will be reduced by 160 million board feet. Forest Minister Ravi Parmar says the closure is a consequence of U.S. President Donald Trump's unfair attack on Canadian forestry. The Conservative opposition says the closure is what happens when government ignores warning signs coming from the forest sector. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says it has shot dead all ostriches at a British Columbia farm, fulfilling a cull order over an avian flu outbreak. It says a professional marksman was used as the most appropriate and humane option to complete the cull at the farm in Edgewood, BC. A holding pen that was filled with ostriches on Thursday now appears still and empty of live birds, and no ostriches can be seen anywhere else on the property. Instead, the pen is filled with long blue tarps covering objects on the ground that are also shrouded with black sheeting. The shooting started around 6 p.m. Thursday and went on for hours after the Supreme Court of Canada ruled earlier in the day that it would not hear the farmer's final appeal against the cull. The CFIA, which numbered the flock at between 300 to 330 birds, says the shootings were completed under veterinary supervision. This story is from just before the act was carried out. CTV's Judy Tran reports.
You want to know what pain looks like, Canada?
The end of a saga that began last December when dozens of birds died on the Universal Ostrich Farm.
She's going to lose everything she's ever loved for 35 years.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency found traces of H5N1 in 2 dead birds and ordered the flock to be culled to contain the virus. The farm fought the order to the Supreme Court, which dismissed the case.
We obviously are pleased to see the decision of the Supreme Court. This is a decision that is following the science and evidence.
More than 300 birds will now be euthanized. Virologists say testing the birds is not an option.
There's really no practical way to actually test these birds. We don't know where the birds might be shedding virus if they are indeed still infected. These are 7 to 9 foot tall birds that are very strong, very fast, very dangerous to people.
Under the Health of Animals Act, the CFIA can now move ahead with depopulation and disposal, and warns that attempts to obstruct the work of its officers could result in prosecution. Dozens of protesters continue their march.
Today you test our faith like you've never tested our faith before.
Praying for a change of heart. The farm was supported by members of the Trump administration, including Secretary of Health Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Chief of Medicare Dr. Mehmet Oz. An American billionaire also contributed $50,000 to the farm's legal fight and is asking Prime Minister Mark Carney to intervene.
I am asking for sympathy and I'm asking for common sense to prevail.
This culling of poultry or stamping out policy that the CFIA is carrying out is an international standard that numerous nations have signed on to, including the U.S. The aim is to contain outbreaks. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
BC's Environment Ministry says a fuel spill from a train that derailed on Saturday night alongside Kamloops Lake has now reached 80,000 litres. It's a marked increase from the over 12,000 litres of aviation fuel reported Tuesday to have been released into the environment from the crash. The ministry says 3 empty rail cars containing residual gasoline remain at the derailment site, with one on the slope leading to the lake while the other 2 are in the water. Canadian Pacific Kansas City said the derailment occurred Saturday night and involved a locomotive and 17 rail cars, 2 of which were carrying aviation fuel. A new study on orca behavior tells us more than we've ever known before about the populations. CTV's Brendan Strain reports.
Research is shedding new light on what we know about the West Coast transient killer whale population. And for the lead author of the report, the findings were 20 years in the making.
I traveled the whole coast looking for whales, from basically southern BC to California.
What Josh McInnes has found is that there are 2 distinct subpopulations, inner and outer coastal transients.
What we found is that these 2 different communities occur in completely 2 different habitats.
The coastal population is seen as city dwellers, navigating inlets, bays, and sheltered waterways, living off of harbor seals and porpoise. Those outer coastal transients are seen as rural dwellers, spending their time a few hundred kilometers offshore.
They use the continental shelf break, so that's where the open ocean meets our continent.
Hunting in deep canyons, feeding off the dolphins, elephant seals, and even juvenile gray whales. Due to the 2 groups' distinct diets, the populations rarely mix.
That becomes a behavioral thing. They learn how to hunt specific species, which means they're going to associate with individuals that hunt the same as you. So that you get this kind of social isolation between the two groups.
There are times when those 2 groups have been observed together, although it's only where their 2 habitats converge. An example of that is where the continental shelf runs close to the California coast.
I'm not surprised in terms of the understanding of the complexity of the creatures. We know that they know how to make the best use of their environment by not competing with each other.
This zoologist says these new findings could go a long way when it comes to killer whale conservation.
The more information that we have to understand habitat use that is farther away and in the offshore regions in the future may help us better conserve creatures and do a better job of looking after our oceans.
McInnes believes these 2 subpopulations may not be alone.
We do believe that there's a third one out there that we call oceanics, that they might be transients. We're not entirely sure yet.
Those killer whales are harder to observe, as they are thought to reside hundreds of kilometers off our coast. Brendan Strain, CTV News, Victoria.
Turning now to your Northwest BC weather report. Tonight on the north coast, expect showers. Temperature steady near 6 degrees. Over the next few days on the north coast, expect periods of rain to continue pretty steady through the weekend. Daily highs 6 to 11 degrees, overnight lows 4 to 10 degrees. Tonight in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect periods of rain ending near midnight, then cloudy. Winds from the south at 20 kilometers an hour, becoming light this evening, a low of +3 degrees. Over the next few days in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect more rain with some let-ups. Daily highs 4 to 9 degrees, overnight lows 2 to 3 degrees. Tonight in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, expect a few clouds. Winds from the south at 20 kilometers an hour, gusting to 40, becoming light early this evening, a low of -6, wind chill -8 overnight. Over the next few days in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, expect possible wet snow or rain, mostly steady precipitation through the weekend and into next week. Daily highs ranging from 1 to 10 degrees, overnight lows from -3 to +2 degrees. Checking your highways around the Northwest now. On Highway 16, watch for bridge maintenance as well as road maintenance, utility work, water pooling, and slippery sections. On Highway 37, watch for slippery sections as well as water pooling. On Highway 37A, there's a section with falling rocks as well as bridge maintenance underway. On Highway 118, watch for slippery sections. On the Niska Highway, watch for mowing and water pooling. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, a statistician points out gaps in the budget. The minority Liberal government has now survived 2 confidence votes on the federal budget. The Conservatives voted against a Bloc Québécois motion to reject the fiscal plan today in Parliament. The House of Commons recorded a vote of 307 against the Bloc amendment and 30 in favor of it. The Liberals need to survive another confidence vote to avoid an early election, as the governing party is just 2 seats away from a majority government. But a former chief statistician is critical of the new budget and citing less data collection as a concern. CTV's Alison Bamford explains.
It really worries me.
Munir Sheikh is concerned about Statistics Canada cuts in the budget. He resigned as Canada's chief statistician over the Harper government's 2010 decision to kill the long-form census and says there are already substantial data gaps which will now multiply.
Cuts at an organization like Statistics Canada is an indication that our country is getting poorer and we can't afford to do the things that are an absolute necessity.
The budget says the frequency of data collection will be reduced where the requirements can be met through statistical modeling or other modern methods. In addition, adjustments will be made to the frequency and level of detail collected for data sets which demonstrate less relevance to Canadians. CTV News asked Statistics Canada and the Finance Department a whole slew of questions. What type of data will be collected less often? What will be collected with fewer details? And who decides what has less relevance for Canadians? They didn't answer any of them. A statement from a Department of Finance official says further details will be available in due course.
Lack of information always makes me nervous.
Biostatistician Erica Moody says the work of Statistics Canada is critical from government to business to community.
Cuts to these data or data collection, the fineness of this data collection could impact things like transit lines in my neighborhood. On the other side, as a researcher, it also affects the work done by my students.
Oh, and from our archives, among those in support of Statistics Canada during the long-form census death fiasco, then Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney.
We will need to evaluate the impact of any proposed changes.
The former head of Statistics Canada warns if the Canadian economy gets worse, even further and worse cuts to data are very possible.
The Farmer's Almanac says growing financial challenges in today's chaotic media environment is behind its decision to stop publication. Online access to the Maine-based publication that was first printed in 1818 will stop next month. Farmers, gardeners, and others keen on predicting the weather have relied on the Almanac for guidance for more than 200 years. The Farmer's Almanac is not to be confused with the even older Old Farmer's Almanac out of New Hampshire. Turning to the markets now, Canada's main stock index finished narrowly in positive territory, reversing losses from earlier in the day, while U.S. markets posted mixed results. The Canadian dollar rose 0.2 cents. The price of gold gained $18.80. Oil was up 32 cents. Natural gas was down 7 cents. Aluminum gained $23. In Toronto, the TSX was up 43 points. The Venture Index gained 9 points. In New York, the Dow Jones was up almost 75 points, and the Nasdaq was down 49 points. Still ahead, American flight disruptions affect Canadian skies. Israel says the remains of another hostage have been turned over in the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says the Red Cross transferred the remains of a hostage to Israeli troops in Gaza. Hamas has now returned the remains of 23 hostages since the start of the current ceasefire between the militants and Israel, which started on October 10th. Tomorrow marks Indigenous Veterans Day in Canada, a time to commemorate the service and sacrifice of Indigenous veterans. CTV's Alex Karpa is in Winnipeg and spoke to some Indigenous veterans ahead of the annual commemoration.
Indigenous veterans honored on the eve of Indigenous Veterans Day. It's a time commemorating the service and sacrifice Indigenous members gave to Canada's military. Wandi Wakita began serving in 1958 and did peacekeeping missions in Germany and Cyprus. He says this time of year is emotional for him.
That was not our war. We volunteered to go because we want to look after our land.
Veterans Affairs Canada says more than 4,000 Indigenous people served during the First World War, with well over 3,000 more answering the call during the Second World War. Hundreds more expanded duties in the Korean War. Devin Beaudry joined the military in 1978 when he was just 18 years old, spending 35 years in the Royal Canadian Air Force. For Beaudry, it's a time to remember all those who came before him.
Sergeant Tommy Prince, remembering him and his sacrifices that he made, not just for Canada, but also for his communities, and how they treated him when he got back.
Systemic discrimination against Indigenous veterans began as soon as they returned home from service.
I acknowledged we failed you.
The Canadian Armed Forces recently apologized for its role in the racial discrimination and harassment current and former members faced while on the job. For Wakita, he wants to see peace around the world.
I want all of us to live together in a good way.
Indigenous Veterans Day was recognized by the federal government in 1994. The latest numbers show that there are 23,000 Indigenous veterans across the country, with around 2,700 Indigenous members serving today.
The government of Denmark announced an agreement today to ban access to social media for children under the age of 15. The move would give some parents the right to let their children access social media from 13 after a specific assessment. Such a measure would be among the most sweeping steps yet by a European Union government to limit use of social media among teens and younger children. That's our news for now. For more local news, come find us on CFTK-TV.com. We're also on TikTok, YouTube, X, and Blue Sky. Make sure to subscribe to us there. And we'll be back on Monday with more local news. Thanks for watching.